When I was fighting for my marriage, I made a list of everything my husband was doing wrong. Not a short list, a very thorough one. Every pattern I had noticed, every way I felt unseen, every moment I had cataloged and carried with me as evidence on what the problem was. I brought it to God faithfully. I prayed over it. I asked Him to open my husband's eyes. I was certain, completely, absolutely certain, that if he could just see what I was seeing, everything would change. What God showed me is that the list was not helping me see clearly. It was keeping me from seeing anything at all. And today, I want to show you what I mean because I think you have a list too. Hey, welcome to Beyond Believing. I am Katie Ann. Whether the conflict in your life right now is with your ex, your church, someone who judged your divorce, or even with yourself, this episode is going to land somewhere specific for you. I'm going to show you something in Matthew 7 that most of us have read and quietly misunderstood our whole lives. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like in your kitchen, in your co parenting app, and in your prayer life. Let's go. I want to tell you about a season in my marriage when I became a very dedicated list maker. And I'm not talking about a grocery list, not a to do list. It was a grievance list, mental, mostly, though there were plenty of journal pages too. Every time something went wrong, every time I felt dismissed or unseen or hurt, every time a pattern repeated that I had already talked about, prayed about, cried about, it went on the list. And the thing about that list is that it grew very easily. Because once you start looking for evidence that someone is the problem, you find it everywhere and how he loaded the dishwasher, and how he responded when the kids needed something, in a tone of voice, a look, a silence that lasted 30 seconds too long. And every new piece of evidence felt like clarity, like I was finally seeing things accurately, like I was being honest with myself about what was really going on. I brought it to God faithfully, consistently. I laid out the list and asked him to deal with it, to open my husband's eyes, to convict him, to help him see what I could so clearly see. I was not being dramatic, not all the time. I was not being vindictive. I genuinely believed I was praying the right prayers. And what I could not see, what God had to show me over time with more patience than I honestly deserved, is that the list was producing something I had no idea I was producing. Let me ask you something before I tell you what that was. Do you have a list? Maybe it's about your ex, what he does, how he parents, how he communicates, what he says to your children or to mutual friends or in the custody paperwork. Maybe it is very long. Maybe it is completely accurate. Maybe it is about your church, the people who did not show up when the divorce happened, the things that were said or implied, the judgment you felt from people who were supposed to be safe. Maybe it is about yourself. Everything you did wrong, every way you failed, every reason the voice in your head tells you that you do not deserve what you are asking God for. Whatever your list is, and however justified it feels, it is producing something in your life that you have not yet been able to see. Because the problem is not actually the list. The problem is where your eyes are pointed when you are holding it. And God showed me this through a verse I had read my entire life and never truly understood. Matthew chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. Verse 3 says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?" Verse 4 says, "How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there's a plank in your own eye. And then verse 5, it says, "You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Now, most of us read this as a humility lesson. Jesus telling us not to be judgmental, to check ourselves before we check someone else, and that is not wrong. But I want you to notice something that most people skip right over. He does not say, ignore the speck. He does not say the speck is not real. He does not say, stop caring about what the other person is doing. He says, first, take the beam out of your own eye. And then, only then, you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. The speck is still there. You are still going to address it, but you cannot see it clearly until you have dealt with what is in your own eye first. So, what is the beam? The beam is the thought you are holding about the other person that you cannot see because you are too focused on what they are doing. And here is the mechanism, the part that undid me when I finally understood it. Whatever thought you hold about another person, you produce in your own life. Not because they put it there, because your thought about them drives your feelings, which drive your actions, which create a result in your life that proves the original thought was right. The result always proves the thought. Always. Proverbs 23:7 says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Not as things happen to him, as he thinks. Which means the list you are carrying is not just describing your experience, it is producing it. Now, I want to show you what this looks like in real time because I was talking with a friend recently who shared something I could not get out of my mind. There is a pastor named Jeff Durbin who goes to public events to share his faith, to evangelize specifically to Mormon, including at Mormon temple houses. And while he was there, a woman came up to him and said, "You're being contentious. We are not going to engage with this spirit of contention." Now, her thought was, he is being contentious. And her feelings were defensive, justified, righteous, and her actions, she stepped in front of her husband, in between her and Jeff Durbin. She interrupted the conversation. She spoke over Jeff. She refused to allow him to continue, and she physically redirected the entire interaction. Her result? She became the most contentious person in that interaction. Now, she did not set out to do that. She was not trying to be what she accused Jeff of being. But her thought produced that result with exact precision. The beam in her eye was, he is contentious, and it shaped everything she did next until her result proved her original thought completely right. That is the mechanism. And it is running in your life right now, in your co parenting, in your relationship with your church, in every situation where you are certain the problem is on the other side. And here is where this lands in your actual life. Your ex is not the problem. I want to say that with care because I am not saying he has not hurt you. I am not saying the patterns you have noticed are not real. I am not saying your pain is not valid. I am saying something more specific than all of that. Your thought about him is producing your experience with him. And as long as your eyes are pointed at the list, as long as you are focused on the beam in his eye, you will keep producing more of what you hate most about your situation. Think about your co parenting communication right now. The text you dread, the handoff that never seems to go smoothly, the way he handles something with the kids that you would never handle in the same way. What is the thought you bring into that interaction before it even begins? That thought is shaping your feeling before you say a word, and your feeling is driving everything you do next. And what you do next is creating the result that proves your original thought was right. The same is true for your church, for the people who did not show up the way you wanted them to, for the community that judged your divorce or went silent when you needed voices. And the same is true for the list you carry about yourself. Every thought on that list, every accusation you bring against yourself is producing a result in your life that proves it true. This is not condemnation. This is the most empowering thing God ever showed me. Because if your thought is producing your experience, that means your thought is yours to change. And God gave you a way to do exactly that. John Piper says, when faith looks in the mirror, it becomes a window to Christ. Now, I have shared that before, but I want to bring it from a new perspective because the mirror is what has been happening, focused outward, watching what everyone else is doing wrong, and without realizing it, becoming it yourself. The window is what God is inviting you into. So stop, turn inward, ask God, what do you want me to think about this person, about this situation, about this season of my life? Not so you can fix the other person, not so you can prove you were right, so you can finally see clearly. First, take the beam out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly. The conflict you have been living in is not coming from your ex. I know it feels that way. It is not coming from your church. It is not coming from anyone who judged your divorce. It is coming from the thought you are carrying about them all. And the moment you are willing to set that thought down and ask God what He would have you think instead, you will see clearly for the first time. And the story you tell about what you have survived will start to look completely different. One question to carry with you this week. What thought are you carrying about someone in your life that is producing the exact experience you most want to be free from? You do not have to answer out loud. Just be honest with yourself. Because the moment you can name the thought, you have a choice about it. And that choice is where everything starts to shift. This is the work that I do in my coaching. Not to be the answer, but to point you to the one who is, to remind you that you have access to everything you truly desire, and to help you begin living like it today. If that conversation is one you are ready to have, you can apply for coaching at coachkdm.com/call. The link is in my show notes. And next week, I'm going to talk about the story you have been telling about everything you have survived. Because the way you tell it is either giving God the glory or quiet. Because the way you tell it is either giving God the glory or quietly leaving Him out of it. You are not going to want to miss it. Subscribe so it comes straight to you. I'll see you then.